This webinar aims to guide you through sustainable strategies for using social media and digital marketing to make your volunteer recruitment efforts easier. I'm Khadija Carr, and I'm joined by Chris Suriano. We will be your hosts today from Vista headquarters in Washington, D.C. You will also see our AmeriCorps Vista colleague, Chris Hawks, and our LSI colleagues in the chat and Q&A.
Excellent. Thanks, Khadija. I'd like to add my welcome as well. My name is Chris Suriano. I work in the Marketing, Outreach, and Recruitment Unit here at AmeriCorps Vista headquarters. I am also a two-term AmeriCorps alum myself, and from all of us here at Vista headquarters, we're very excited to welcome you to our very first member webinar of the year. So here are the session objectives. Today we'll cover the elements of a strong digital recruitment plan, strategies and social media platforms that are best suited to recruit your target audiences, how to raise your project's profile through successful digital campaigns, and we'll conclude with a Q&A session. Khadija, would you like to kick us off?
Sure thing, Chris. In the pre-webinar chat, many of you listed Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter as your favorite social media platforms. We'd like to hear from you again. What does your Vista site do to promote volunteer opportunities? So what tasks, what steps, or activities do you do to help get the word out? Type your answer in the chat panel so that others can see. This can either be a couple of words or a brief sentence if you'd like. So it seems that people have posts that they share on Facebook through the events, relationships with professors, Instagram, websites, social media posts, pro bono tabs on the website. Looks like photos of current volunteers to attract more volunteers. Excellent strategy. I'm seeing a lot of word of mouth. This always seems to be a very great way to get the word across. I see MailChimp, newsletters, emailing, partnership flyers. There's a whole host of responses here. So make sure that you keep those responses coming. It looks like there's so many more coming. Constant contact, work with other groups. Excellent. So we really know that a lot of what your organization does can really help drive a lot of the volunteer recruitment. So with that, we're going to move on to why your brand matters. So we know how strong brands affect consumer behavior, and people spend their money on products that they perceive to align with their own image, their values, and their identity. And strong marketing allows brands to build and reinforce these perceptions. So how and where people choose to spend their time is no different. And according to LinkedIn, 72% of people who recently changed jobs knew about the organization some 6 to 8 months before they heard about the job. If you use the same principle when recruiting volunteers, if someone in your community wants to get involved in a specific cause, is your Vista site one of the first organizations that they think of? Do they even know that there are volunteer opportunities available? If not, marketing can really help change that perception.
All right, so way before you create your breathtaking Instagram account or your snarky Twitter identity for your organization and then expect that to magically lead to a line of volunteers circling the block, you need to map out who you are trying to recruit. So you've probably already addressed the important question of who you need. Do you need the same 8 adult volunteers to show up twice per week? Do you need 35 youth volunteers for 6 hours on a single Saturday? Do you need 1 part-time, long-term volunteer to fill a highly specialized role? Your marketing resources, notably your time and your organization's money, are precious. So just as you would be intentional about where you show up to recruit someone in person, you need to be intentional about where you are connecting with potential volunteers online.
In many cases, organizations will devote a page of their website to showcase volunteer opportunities and impact. A lot of you mentioned in the pre-chat question that your organization showcases many of the volunteer opportunities there. So we're going to talk a bit about your organization's website. So make sure that you make prominent the volunteer roles on the website, right? What specific responsibilities and time commitment is expected of your volunteers? How can people register to volunteer, and why is their service critical to the mission? Be sure that the language and images you use to pitch your volunteer openings are appealing, but also an accurate representation of the work that a volunteer will actually be doing.
And at the end of the day, what better testament to your organization's mission than its beneficiaries? So be sure to share testimonials of community members impacted by your organization's work, and always accompany that with photos. And even more engaging are short videos of volunteers serving and the community being served. So even if you don't have a budget to produce a video, you and your volunteers can create quality content on a smartphone. Beyond your organization's website, you'll also want to turn to popular external hiring sources to cast a wider volunteer net. You may be familiar with Idealist, which houses the largest nonprofit job board in the nation with more than 9,000 volunteer opportunities. Lucky for us, organizations can create a free page and volunteer opportunities can be posted at no cost. And the searches include functions, location, organization types, and other criteria.
There's also Volunteer Match. For a small fee of $9.95 a month, there is an offer for extensive volunteer recruitment and management services. Features such as automatic reply and attachments further engage your target audience and expand your reach. So don't hesitate to ask your supervisor if there are funds available for volunteer recruitment.
And it never hurts to recruit on a smaller, more local platform. Did you know that most states have volunteer service commissions? Many local service organizations like California Volunteers and Volunteer Louisiana, for example, have their own volunteer boards, and they can be an excellent way to reach volunteers in your area.
Volunteer listings should have a tone that invites. It engages and it convinces the reader that this is the right thing for them. Think of this like a property listing on a real estate site. Be hyper aware of how a listing on any given website will appear once it's published. Let's use this Idealist search as an example. The position title, organization name, and location is the only information that a searcher will have before they click on the listing. Does your position title pack enough punch to get someone to click through to the description? As you're writing the listing, keep in mind how volunteers will register. Do you need them to click through to your website? Will they need to email someone directly? Make sure that you're explicit about what the process entails.
Here's a biggie. Is your organization on LinkedIn? LinkedIn is a great option to search for volunteers. It is the largest professional network in the world with nearly 600 million profiles. For use in volunteer recruitment, there's a few options. You can set up a company profile if your organization does not already have one, and make postings and updates about your organization. It operates much like Facebook, so people in your network can share your opportunities to their followers. Also explore LinkedIn for nonprofits, which will help you create a strong volunteer recruitment presence on the site, and this includes free listings. LinkedIn also has a paid recruitment service with advanced targeting to people with the skills and experience you're looking for. Now it's pricey, so it may be outside your budget, but it works well if you are targeting a very specific, very experienced type of volunteer. Email marketing is very powerful and effective also, like many have mentioned in the chat so far. Unfortunately, platforms like MailChimp and Constant Contact do cost money, but your organization may already have them. And if not, many of them include a discounted rate for nonprofits and are a worthwhile investment. These platforms provide you with analytics like open rates and click rates that allow you to monitor your success and track your contacts. And with certain subscriptions, you can even try text messages in addition to emails. Now, if the funds for established email marketing platforms aren't realistic for your organization, you should still make email and text message outreach a foundational aspect of your volunteer recruitment and retention plan. So be sure to maintain a database of emails of past volunteers so you can send them pitches, updates, newsletters, and future opportunities.
No one likes to receive spam, so make sure that your emails have a clear purpose. always keep in mind, what's the ask? What action do you want your readers to take? Get to the point and make it easy for the reader. Attention spans are short, and as we'll discuss with social media posts, visuals are key. Use engaging images to grab your reader's attention and break up long blocks of text. Social media is a critical component of an organization's online identity and a crucial extension of your website. This is no longer a digital world where people go to your website first and then learn about you and then follow you on social media. People who like and use Twitter will find you on Twitter, and then if they like your Twitter feed, they'll go to your website. People who like and use Instagram and seek you out on Instagram first, and so on. For many of us, social media can feel like a handful. Many different platforms, each with their own flavor, that requires time and creativity to do it right. But each platform can be a great opportunity to reach your target audiences. Social media allows you to emphasize your brand, stay connected with your stakeholders, and of course, share stories and impact.
All right, what makes good content? Going viral is a lot like winning the lottery. If you did it, it involved a lot more luck than skill. So let's get real, everybody. It's unlikely that one of your social media campaigns will ever become the next Ice Bucket Challenge. But you should still be conscious of patterns that make some social media content more engaging than others. Does it feel authentic? Are you striking the correct tone? Is it easy to understand at first glance? Is it bite-sized, and can someone easily share it? Make sure you're checking all of these boxes before you click publish. Also, familiarize yourself with how content displays differently on a mobile device versus a desktop. You may be sending your tweets out on your laptop, but nearly all of your Twitter followers will be engaging with it on their phones. Make sure you're paying attention to both.
Now I want to get a little more into the nuts and bolts. When creating content for social media, visuals are critical. If you want to succeed in this space, you must invest the time, energy, and resources to highlight your impact in a visual way. Now we know the size and resources of your programs can vary. Some of you may have designers and social media managers on staff, while others may not even have social media accounts yet. Whichever the case, let's go over some simple tools for making the job easier and some of the types of content that have proven successful. What's the dominant visual medium online? Video, of course. According to the online marketing expert Marcus Sheridan, 80% of the content that we consume online in 2019 will be video. One of the best ways you can market your volunteer opportunities is by creating quality videos that share your impact, highlights your organization's mission, and spotlights the importance of volunteers. Resource levels vary by organization, so if your budget is tight, don't be afraid to wrangle a few volunteers and get creative. User-generated content is huge and can often be more popular than slick, overproduced advertisement. Familiarize yourself with YouTube, Facebook Live, or Instagram Stories as platforms that can engage your various audiences with video content.
Quotes and volunteer features are easy content to produce. Never underestimate the power of a simple, inspirational quote. The VISTA program often posts Motivation Monday quotes or Wisdom Wednesday quotes, and they'll catch fire. They're very shareable, and you can always accompany it with a call to action and a link to volunteer. Social media is a place where you can assert the value of your organization and inspire others to be part of it. Another great option is volunteer features. So amplifying the stories of your volunteers and always accompanying them with a simple photo and a quote about their service can go a long way in inspiring someone else to serve.
Social media audiences are suckers for listicles, which are fun, casual, and very shareable. Think BuzzFeed. On the left is a listicle by AmeriCorps Vista members who wrote about 5 lessons for nonprofits and other service members. This is an example of members highlighting their experiences and sharing advice. It doesn't have to be overthought or scientific. Just make sure to connect content to a call to serve or apply. Our second example shows how an organization can profile their volunteers on their blog. Both of these pieces of content are great templates to replicate.
All right, here is an example of content that often performs very well centering around your organization's impact. Create infographics that highlight the impact that your volunteers have in the community. Your current volunteers may be inclined to share it to their audience because they're proud of being part of that impact. Meanwhile, prospective volunteers may see it and want to join a cause that they know will make a difference. When crafting social media posts, let your images speak for themselves as much as possible. So don't repeat information in the caption of the post that is already overlaid or otherwise conveyed through the image. Instead, add a short sentence that summarizes the information you are presenting in the infographic. So some of you may be wondering, how do you overlay text on that photo or make that transparent effect? Don't worry, we're going to show you some easy online resources for non-designers. So here are a couple tools. The first is canva.com. It's a graphic design resource for dummies. It has thousands of pre-designed templates that you can upload your own photos and logo onto and then make a variety of graphic assets. So from your Facebook cover photos to social media recruitment advertisements, this software is very helpful for organizations big and small. And I encourage everyone to go on it, play around, and see exactly how easy it is to use.
Icons. You may wonder where all those little icons you see everywhere come from. Icons are very trendy in the design world, and they're an excellent way to communicate information visually. TheNounProject.com is a free icon library where you can download icons that are great for infographics. All right, so we have talked a lot about content that performs well and creative ways you can make your own visuals. With that, what design resources have you used that are worth sharing? Type your answer in the chat panel so that others can see. Ooh, I see Wix.com, and that person says, honestly, a lot to work with. Yeah, I've seen Wix a ton of times used for websites and other cool things. What are you seeing over there, Chris?
Pictochart. Pictochart is something very similar to Canva that's popular.
Oh, yeah. I love Layout. Ripple, R-I-P-L. I'm not familiar with this one. We have to give that one a search, Chris.
I see Adobe, so InDesign, Illustrator, Photoshop. Of course, those require licenses, but if you have them, they are incredible resources.
Illustrator, Spark, WordPress. I'm seeing a lot of WordPress. Ooh, I'm even seeing some links being dropped in there. Awesome. Adobe Spark. Seems like a lot of Adobe products or programs here. Publisher.
And of course, even more complicated programs. Canva is easy to plug and play if you're a beginner and just kind of familiar with browsing the internet. But even the more advanced stuff, like Illustrator and InDesign, there are plenty of tutorials out there that don't feel intimidated. Dive right in.
Nice. I'm seeing Drupal, Pixlr. Wow, I'm seeing a ton that I've never heard of. So this is very, very useful. I'm sure you all are going to get some nice gems out of this. And in addition to the gems that your fellow Vistas are sharing, there is also a handout of helpful links. You should find that in the Handouts to Download pod. And it's got all of the links that we are mentioning in this presentation. So continue to keep those responses coming. All right, Chris, do you think that we can move on?
Yes.
Awesome. So once you've hammered out what your content looks like, The next step is to send it out into the world. And Chris, can you tell us how that's done?
Of course. So one really helpful tool for managing your social media accounts, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, is scheduling them in advance. So depending on the platform, that can vary. Facebook allows you to create and schedule posts up to 6 months in the future. It's easy. Just click the drop-down menu next to the Publish button and select the Schedule option. So you'll need to make sure that your type of Facebook page, though, is a company page and not a personal page. For Twitter, programs like Hootsuite and TweetDeck allow you to schedule tweets for specific dates and times in the future. While there are limitations, for example, you cannot tag other accounts in your Twitter images, these scheduling tools allow you to map out your social media plans well into the future.
Social media has organic content, meaning it's free to post and will be shared with your followers. Most platforms also have opportunities for paid advertisements, often referred to as promoted or boosted content. Organic content means the only people that see your content are those who have already liked or followed your organization. We sometimes refer to this as talking to ourselves. Promoted content allows you to reach new audiences who may not be aware of your program and target them based on location, interest, skills and experience, and more. Facebook is an easy and affordable place to dip your toes into paid social media campaigns. And even a little bit of money can go a long way to driving traffic to the website.
As some of you know, as many of you know, social media can be more of an art than a science. All right, so while every platform has analytics to help you keep a pulse on what works and what doesn't, trends come and go, and levels of engagement are apt to rise and fall and rise again. If your posts don't generate traction, don't fret. Keep experimenting. It's all about connecting with your audience in a captivating and relevant way, and sometimes that's a moving target. And remember, social media never sleeps, so don't overthink it and use the tools at your disposal to create great visuals, schedules, and a lot more. And don't forget to give it your best shot. All right, so today we dove deep into the world of digital marketing and showed you ways that you can leverage digital media to make your volunteer recruitment efforts easier. We hope you enjoyed the session and, more importantly, learned some things from it. Before you log off, we do have a short evaluation and then a Q&A session.
So you should soon be seeing a pod come up that will have a survey in it. And in this survey, you can give us your honest feedback on the presentation. We know that this social media and digital marketing world is quite dense. So we did leave a lot of time for questions and answers. So we really hope that you'll take this opportunity to call in or write in some questions you have about any of the content that we shared with you all today. I know that this is a ton of information to wrap your head around, and volunteers are on high demand for all of you. So definitely take the time to send in your questions and call in via phone. So we will invite our operator on the line to explain how a question is asked via phone.
Thank you, Khadijah. We just started the floor mode. If you dialed into the webinar or had Adobe call you back and would like to ask a question over the phone line, press *# and you will be placed in the queue. When it is your turn to ask a question, you will hear the prompt, "You have the floor," and you can ask your question. Once again, to ask a question over the phone line, press *# and to be placed in the queue. Thank you.
So it looks like there might be some technical issue with the survey, so we are going to post that in the chat. And the survey link is going to be moved so that the Q&A pod is again visible.
So looking at the chat, there was a really good question, I think, from Allison, just saying, are there any, does anybody have any social media best practices for 2019? There were included in the chat earlier a couple of documents for led by Sprout Social. Sprout Social is a social media company. They have kind of scheduling and dashboard functionality services that they offer for paid services, but they also have a blog with a lot of good information, including best practices for your visuals. It tells you kind of what dimensions and specs your visuals should be for each platform that you post on. And then they also, I think it was posted to the chat earlier, there's about like a 50 or 60 social media best practices to keep in mind, and it goes through a variety of platforms. That's also on the handout.
Let's see. I see a question that's asking if the notes and links provided would be sent via email. So we do have all of the links that we have mentioned in the helpful links handouts to download pod. If it's the one that begins with helpful links, you can click and download that file, and all of the links we mentioned today are in that document. Any of the chat things that you want, you can simply copy and paste, but we do not have those as they are generated live from all of your excellent responses.
I see somebody mentioned, Denise mentioned, I use a lot of hashtags, which is awesome. I highly recommend it. Obviously, I think we're all familiar basically with how the hashtag works. Something to keep in mind, though, is hashtags work a little bit differently on every platform that you use them on. So they are a little more effective oftentimes on Instagram, on Twitter than they would be on Facebook if you're trying to generate conversation and noise. Also know that you can use a hashtag to either join a conversation that's already happening, such as if there's a large-scale, a nationwide movement that your organization wants to piggyback onto or slide into the conversation on, you can use that hashtag, or you can create your own hashtag and brand it for your organization so that it sort of curates content related specifically to your organization. So you can get creative on how you use hashtags on your social media posts.
I do see a question here asking about, let's see, it's looking like it's asking about Canva further, whether or not Canva is free.
Yes, and I'm seeing some responses that Canva has a free service. They also have a Canva Premium, which is a paid service, but it seems like some folks in the chat with experience using Canva at their organization, at their nonprofit, say that Canva Premium is free for nonprofits. Jessica says Canva is free, but to add a logo, there's a fee. But I think that's important for all of these resources. There are a lot of discounts available for digital marketing platforms depending on if your organization is a nonprofit.
I do see a question here that's asking, what do you recommend for a government office that may not have as much freedom or authority over a social media account?
That's an interesting question. Working with AmeriCorps Vista accounts and them being government accounts themselves, we are aware that there are a lot of restrictions that government organizations have in using social media. I think it's just really important to understand what your office's regulations are in terms of technology and communications, and to, I guess, remember at all times that it is a lot of times for government social media accounts, they are public spaces. So comments and messages that you receive are public, kind of public information that needs to be archived and related to all kind of information technology regulations. But if there are other kind of specific restrictions that you're encountering in terms of content that you're creating, please add that to the chat and we'll be happy to talk about that too.
So I see another question that's asking, how exactly does the Noun project work?
That is a great question. It is pretty easy to navigate, and I encourage everybody to just check it out. It's pretty self-explanatory. You can just download your icons and then insert them into your graphic images that you're using on other platforms, other graphic design software.
All right. It says, what should be your approach if your organization doesn't have a clear marketing mission or vision, muddled by many different opinions and people posting, and therefore the content reflects that?
That is a problem. I think I know this webinar is specifically about digital marketing, and I think your digital marketing plan is really an extension of your overall volunteer recruitment plan, right? So I think really honing in on what your overall volunteer recruitment and retention plan is and making sure that everybody who plays a role in that is on the same page. And then as part of that, breaking out the digital component. So making sure that you have a consistent voice, consistent messaging, consistent language, that the language you're using to describe your volunteer opportunities on your website and on your idealist listings matches that language that you're using on Twitter and Instagram, and you can have success with multiple people posting to different platforms, but you have to make sure that you're using the same message and that you are reinforcing your brand and everybody uses the same language.
And on this Twitter topic, there's been a few questions about Twitter chat and if there are any suggestions for doing a successful Twitter chat.
Suggestions for a successful Twitter chat? Yes. Make sure that you prep, and make sure that you advertise it well, that you get buy-in from your partners and other organizations online or your folks in your network on Twitter so that they know when to be there, that they have the questions in advance, that they're using the correct hashtags, so that you're not just shouting out into the Twitter sphere, into the void, and not getting any response. When you set up your Twitter chat, you want to make sure that it is focused, that you have a specific theme that you're addressing, and not just opening it up to random Q&A, but having set questions, set themes that your partners know in advance and are ready to engage with.
I do see that a lot of people in both the pre-webinar chat and another chat mentioned word of mouth as a great strategy. So maybe let's talk a little bit about the differences between word of mouth and digital marketing for volunteer recruitment and how one might be more effective than the other.
Sure. I think that there are actually a lot of similarities, right, at the base level. On social media, you put up your Facebook post, and the goal of that is the same goal that you would have with word of mouth, is that folks who have volunteered with you are going to share that message to their networks, and therefore you're going to hook new followers. I think that where the difference is that online, in the digital world, attention spans are short, right? You're not talking to somebody face-to-face and being able to describe your volunteer experience over a longer conversation. You have to make the sale real quick. We had the slide up earlier. You have fractions of seconds in order to make your impact online. So use your visuals, use your most engaging stories, and find the real quick language that's going to hook an audience. And I think that's kind of the key difference between the online world and having a face-to-face word-of-mouth conversation.
Yeah, I see that someone's asking, what are some of the beginning steps to starting a social media campaign?
Starting a social media campaign, I think understand where your audience is, understand which platform you're using, and making sure that that is what's driving your traffic. It's real simple, but it's really important. If you want to make an impact, understand where your audience is. And then it's important to understand what the ask is. I'm sure a lot of times for everybody here, the ask is going to be sign up to volunteer, which is fine, but how are you going to ask that over a long, extended campaign if you're doing a few weeks, a couple months of a digital campaign? And then map it out. Make sure that it's mapped out from day one and that every single part is cohesive, right? And it's building off of itself. And you're not just kind of putting something up for the sake of it.
And I'm seeing a lot of questions asking about different demographics and the way that we use digital marketing differently depending on what age bracket that we're in. Can you talk a little bit about how one might attract an older audience on digital in the digital marketing world versus maybe a younger person that is more familiar with the platforms?
That is a good question. I think there is a lot of demographic research that you can look at. I mentioned the Sprout Social tips and tricks and kind of best practices that we sent out earlier that kind of goes over the demographics of your different platforms. Understand, once again, where your audience is. If you're looking for one single long-term volunteer who has a lot of professional experience, go to LinkedIn, go to these more kind of professional job boards. If I think everybody has kind of a grasp. Ask your volunteers that are already on site, hey, what platforms are you on? Are you interested in following us on Instagram? Are you interested in following us on Facebook? Do you not care that we're on any of these? Would you rather just get an email from us? Would you like to get a text message? Ask your volunteers, focus group your own volunteers. Surveys. Allison says surveys, exactly. After, ask your volunteers how they heard about you, how they want to stay in touch, cater to them.
Let's see. Just want to make sure that folks are aware, if you want to call in via phone to ask a question, you would press *#. Here's some really good questions coming in. I also see, I think I see one more. Yeah, I see. Is there a specific time of day that people are more likely to be using social media? Is there a best time to post a volunteer opportunity listing?
People are on social media all the time. There's a really fascinating, if you have a Facebook company page and you go into Insights, it will show you when your Facebook followers are online. And it is constant. They are online all day except for the wee hours. So from early morning until I think it tapers off around 9-10 p.m. When folks start going to sleep. So don't post your content in the middle of the night, but really play around with it. A/B tests, so kind of test out different times of day that you're sending your emails. So send some emails early in the morning, send some of your emails late at night, see which ones are getting more traffic, and then go with that. Try it out based on your audience. I like to post social media content earlier in the day on weekdays if I'm hoping for organizations to engage with it. I'll post it later in the afternoon around evening rush hour for if I want to try it another time when I know people are kind of idly looking at their phones right after work. But test it out. A/B test your content. This goes for social media posts. This goes for email messages in particular. See what works. You can A/B test times of day. You can A/B test subject lines. It's a great thing to test. Send the same message with 2 different subject lines and see which one works better, and then stick with one or try out a couple new ones. Test.
Let's see. Do you see any more questions in the chat, Chris?
I will keep scrolling. See if we missed anybody.
Oh, I see one that's asking, can you describe again the difference between organic and promoted content?
Excellent. So it's just fancier ways of saying organic content is the stuff that you're going to put out into the world and hit publish on, and it's going to go to your followers on Facebook or your followers on Twitter or your followers on Instagram. The promoted content is paid advertisements. So let's use Facebook, for example, because it's a very user-friendly, easy platform to advertise on with paid advertisements. You can create essentially a Facebook post and then put a little bit of money behind it. It doesn't have to be a huge budget. It can be $50. It can be, $20. It can be $100. Whatever your resources are, and then you get to choose who those messages get targeted to, and then based on how many clicks or how many impressions those messages have, that is how you're charged, and that is how your campaign is judged in terms of analytics. So it is a way, promoted posts, paid campaigns, are a way to reach audiences, audiences that are not already following you. All right, so it's branching out into new audiences as opposed to your organic content, which is the daily, weekly posts that you're putting on your social media platforms that are going straight to the audiences that have already liked you, that are already familiar with you.
I see a question that says, if sharing an article, should I keep the description short or long?
Clickbait. Short. People have short attention spans. You want to, obviously, if you're sharing an article, you want your caption and description to get to the heart of what it is, because even if somebody scrolls past it and decides not to click on the article, you want the post that they saw to make an impression and for them to leave understanding what your message is. But don't write out paragraphs upon paragraphs of content in your Facebook post when the article is going to say the same thing. Especially if the article is, for example, on your blog and directing people to your website where they can sign up for volunteer opportunities. That's kind of what you want to do, drive traffic to where people can sign up to volunteer. That's the main point, I would think, of putting out your volunteer testimonials and all of your other social media content. So think in terms of clickbait. What's going to get you to click? What's of interest as you're scrolling through your own feeds? What are the techniques that people are using to get you to click through to the content that you want? And use those same principles. Try them out.
So I see 2 more questions. The first is, how do you best advertise a blog of like a previous volunteer, it seems, of a previous volunteer who served? I'm assuming this is to attract another volunteer based on this volunteer's testimonial.
The best way to advertise it, if it's really, really well written and it's, well, I would promote it on your social media channels. I would also make sure that ask permission if the blog is on the volunteer's personal blog. Ask for their permission if you can post it on your website and then link to theirs and give them credit for it, so that your social media posts are driving traffic to your own website where people can sign up to volunteer. So I would always try to, when you're borrowing content from other volunteers, make sure that you're giving the source appropriate credit and you're checking with them for using their content and using their writing. But see if you can post it on your website too, so that more folks that kind of organically go to your website can see it, or it will lead your social media followers to your website.
Nice. And I see the last one is, do small organizations need digital marketing more so than large ones?
I think it's no, I wouldn't say that they necessarily need it more or less. I think it's a vital part of recruiting volunteers and strengthening your brand. So I think large and small organizations rely on word of mouth, rely on brand recognition, but you can be a very small organization in a small community, but if your community members are on Facebook or are navigating the internet, then it's still important to have that digital presence. So I don't think it's more or less important necessarily, but it is important.
All right, so I'm not seeing any more questions. Chris, correct me if I'm wrong.
I think here's one from Philip, who's concerned about copyright laws. As organizations, are you able to repost other posts on Facebook? As an organization, you should be able to share other posts on Facebook. When you share a post on Facebook, it's essentially already citing the original source, because that person or organization's commentary comes up underneath yours. One that where copyright infringement and laws come into play and where you want to be careful is if you're taking photographs or visuals from other organizations or from media. Make sure that you are either giving appropriate credit, giving photo credit to the source, or double checking, just reaching out to that organization. It's easy to find their info or direct message them on social media, asking permission to use that content. So that's a lot of photo and visual content.
All right, I'm seeing no more questions. And with that, we will end a little bit earlier than scheduled. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you again. Make sure that you're on the lookout for the next member webinar. And from all of us here at VISTA and CNCS, thank you for your service.